Well, let's get straight to it and commence this interview immediately. Question number one. How would you introduce yourself slash team slash firm? I don't have a firm or a team. So as an individual, I would introduce myself as Henry Smith. I grew up in Salt Lake City, Utah, USA. And I started my architectural education at the University of Utah, which is right up the street to the east. And from there, I went on to get my graduate degree at the University of Oregon with the Portland campus. And my emphasis was in ecological urbanism or sustainable urbanism. Other than that, I love skiing, growing up around the mountains. I'm really into music. I played piano growing up. I love art. I love making art still. I'm an off-road UTV slash side-by-side race car driver, desert racing, jumps, crazy train, all kinds of that stuff. And then obviously, I love architecture and design. So that's me. Question number two. Give us brief information of your previous projects, works, research, achievements. Well, hopefully this story will have a bit of brevity. So post acquiring my graduate degree, or achieving my graduate degree, my father asked me to work for him to learn his business. It would take a couple of years. I ended up spending 6 years there. Unfortunately, in 2020, he passed away, which was hard. And then in the last 2 years, I've, with a coworker, a colleague, been trying to figure out the last deals and get everything done to kind of shut down the business. So honestly, me joining this competition has a lot to do with that I had an 8-year hiatus, and that I wanted something more recent to go into my portfolio to exhibit that, I have designed something since 2014. Anyways, the way it turned out is stupendous, and I'm just very grateful. Question number 3. What advice would you give to individuals who struggle to decide whether it would be beneficial for them to participate in an architecture vision competition? Well, everything about this level of competition is just really interesting, really cool. First of all, to compete against people who are from all around the world, and when that top 50 came out, and to look at all of those designs and to see what people's influences are, what the graphic styles are, how people do their boards. Everything about it is very interesting relative, to perhaps where you've been educated or what you've learned or what you've developed. It's the whole thing. It's just really cool from my perspective, to be honest. Also, one of the best parts of a competition is that you have freedom of process. There is not a professor, not a principal, there is not a client who is addressing how you should design or what you should develop or where your thought process is coming from. It's all you. And that fact alone is incredibly liberating. It's fun. It's fun just to have just an open palette to just be yourself, be your individual, design the way that you want to design, and what is expressed in that final board that you submit, it's all you, and it's all on you, and the whole process is it's astonishing, and it's really great. So I would definitely recommend it. Question number 4. What were the challenges you faced while designing for such architectural space? Well, obviously the elephant in the room is that 4 people to 350 square feet, that's no easy task. Also, to give that type of spatial circumstance a design where people could really work and be happy together in that small of a space, that's a challenge in its own. And then, I try to give outdoor space and separation of privacy, to make that more livable. I'll get to more in the next question, but also for my particular project, designing in a street, even though the streets in Salt Lake City are extremely wide, the medians are not that big. That move in through the middle of the street. They're basically like intermediate sidewalks. The intention of that from the city, I'm sure, is to slow down traffic, to create more parking, to do what they can with how wide the streets are, and to make it feel more walkable. And then further from that, it creates a condition where, well, you could probably do something with that. But the difficult aspect of this design is that you are designing within the parameters of a median, which means that your structure has to go down the entire median. I wanted to approach this design and not affect anything else in the street, just to create something from that concrete structure for walking. Furthermore, the hard part was getting the structure in, and then making sure that the actual modules would fit within that structure, within the design that I desired to deliver. And then also, I think the most difficult part was getting ingress and egress circulation from that median up 17 feet, which is the required height for a pedestrian walkway. So presumably that would be the height the structure would need to be at, minimum. And then, furthermore, just, configuring all of that to actually be feasible and to work, and, to get 2 stairways on each side up, and then to the next level, and then an elevator. I think putting that and the structure in where it needed to go, in a place where, both sides cantilever, I think that was the biggest challenge for myself, is putting an architectural design and structure in the middle of a street. All right, question number 5. What was your thought process while designing for Micro Housing 2022 architecture competition? First of all, my initial thought process is printed off the guide. Judging criteria: concept, site selection, spatial design, modularity. So what that tells me is that that is the focus of this project. And that is really the sole focus. Obviously with my particular project, I wanted, definitely reach a broader public context, and so I create the public refuge garden. So that's kind of the initial thought is, okay, so what is this building doing for the public interface? All right, then what is it doing for housing? All right, and then how do I apply those to my site selection, which was the street? I mean, this question, what was your I mean, that's such a big question. My initial idea was follow the criteria. Follow it. That's what they want. You might notice in my design that I have louvered the large floor-to-ceiling windows of fenestration, and that is a sustainability aspect for passive solar. It gets to be 110 Fahrenheit here, and it can get as cold as -20 Fahrenheit, which I know that this is not metric, but look those up. And it's really cold and really hot. And so for me personally, I was like, oh wow, I cannot avoid dealing with the sustainability aspect. But in my boards, I don't talk about altitude angles. I don't discuss any sustainability factors, even though there are a few, because that wasn't part of the judging criteria. So I don't actually bring too much attention to any of those. They're there, and if you've designed, you know what they're there for. But I'd be focused on the criteria solely. As far as my thinking for how I came up with my form is, first I'm thinking of the modularity of the unit, and I'm thinking, how do you naturally create an outdoor space? And so that's where I initially come up with the idea to shear the structure and then mirror it, so that you've done nothing but add, some stairs, and now you just naturally, by form and function, have an outdoor space. Because I think if you live in 350 square feet with 3 other people, really any type of housing project, I feel requires to have accessibility to private outdoor space. I just think that's, as a human being, that is something that should be granted. And then the rest of the project is thinking about, okay, so you need the most lighting by your living and working spaces, and also less light, obviously, by the public park. That's also for security issues, but so how do you implement everything? How do you organize it spatially? And then, of course, like the beds. I think in any design, when you're thinking about a small space, beds take up a majority of that space if you just lay them out. So how do you deal with the sleeping space? And you have to obviously, from my perspective, you integrate it into everything else. And the way that I did it is I turned 2 twin beds into a king bed on like a double hinge system, so that they can either be twins or they can just all come out as one king bed, and those are just nominal mattress sizes. So when you're thinking about that, I mean, you're not going to design something where you have to manufacture your own mattresses. So it was important for me to figure out how to use just the sizes of beds that exist and how to integrate that already into the office space, office library, and then living, entertainment, whatever space. And so that was my idea for working with the Murphy style beds. And yeah, I think ultimately the whole thing, it does come down to looking at the judging criteria, and then just trying to be innovative, but also in in the most simple manner that you can. Like use your form to using your form to accomplish certain aspects of the design or functions that you want to occur. And so I suppose that would be my thought process. All right. Question number 6. What attracted you to this competition? Well, this particular competition, obviously I was already competition shopping, scrolling through, looking at, hey, what are viable competitions? What's something where I could design? Have I established in question 2? I've been kind of in a transition where now I'm trying to beef up my portfolio and get some projects rolling to beef up that portfolio, because I haven't really designed anything substantial or significant in quite some time. I've only done some like minor little small projects for friends and family. But first off, so I've always had kind of this site in my mind, the site that I use for the project, or a site on any of the media, and just thinking, wow, we have these really large streets, what could we do? And that's just been on my mind for years and years and years of living here. And so as I'm looking through, I find this competition and I go, oh, micro housing, that's what I'm going to put in the street. And so it was kind of in conjunction with a lot of things going on, and I was on this project and looked at the jury. The jury are immensely capable, incredible contributors to the architectural industry. So okay, this is legit competition. And then it was just something that everything came together, where I just knew that this was with impact competitions, and micro housing competition is where I wanted to go, especially because I come from, my roots are really in urbanism. This is just such an urbanism project, and to me it just seemed like the coolest one and the most fun to design. Okay, number 7, where does your interest in design come from? Okay, when I think of the derivatives of my interest, I didn't grow up in an architecture family. I don't even think my parents hung out with an architect. It wasn't even like really a profession that I'd ever considered growing up. But I was always super interested in the sciences. Like that was my cup of tea. Biology, geology, astrophysics, molecular biology, physics, just general physics. It just always was fascinating to me, and math, and those were the classes that I did really well in. I also loved my art classes, but and maybe where I grew up, or the situation I grew up in, like the art was never even seen as like that was just something that you did as a pastime, for fun, as a hobby. It wasn't a career. So I don't think I'd ever really even thought of design or anything of that nature. Fast forward to college, and still just super interested in art classes, science classes. It's my bread and butter. I take an intro to architecture class, and just opens up my world. Fundamentally, just to hear people articulate about space and design, and just the generation of creating something such as building a structure or installation or something like that, and just to see people's thought process, it just opened up my world. And also all of the subjects that I've always loved, all the sciences, all of the art, that's just fully integrated. It's just this accretion disk that is just spinning around everything that I like to do, and man, it's just coalescing, and what's in the middle is architecture. And after that class, I knew that, wow, this is a real career. Like, I can do everything I love in this one career. And that was when I decided to pursue architecture. And so that, I mean, that's where the derivative is. We'll get to the fundamentals next. Okay, so question number 8. What design fundamentals do you believe in? Now, I think that is a really heated question to ask, especially since anyone in architectural studies could go on and on and on and on and on and on and on about their fundamentals. But for me, I mean, I have a bit of a cheat sheet because this has been a while, and I would love to discuss this and really what my ideals are, very distilled down. Theoretically, obviously, I believe in ecological and sustainable urbanism. Urbanism obviously is very at my core of design. Inclusive urban morphologies, regenerative design, biomimetic design, parametric design, which typically I would think is considered as this highly algorithmic, curvilinear, insane type of project design. But I personally would think of it in a more simplistic manner, which is especially dealing with modular design, which is, you begin with a unit, or like cellular, and then you go to the organization, or the organism, and then the affect. And I emphasize the A and the affect is in thinking from sort of more of a phenomenological a derivation, and considering how the differentiations and interactions of the user, and then think very phenomenologically about the qualitative or experiential aspects of that design, and then how you take this idea of parametricism, and then you bring the human experience into it. Furthermore, I come from definitely a sustainability background. I like, if I can just talk about the essences or the essentials, is wind, water, solar, land, and then within that, the theater of society, whether that has to do political, historical, social, but those aspects of the design I think are imperative to bring into it. And then after going through architecture school and people learning that you're into architecture, I think one of the biggest questions, you've probably dealt with this, is, oh, hey, what style? What is your style of architecture? And fundamentally, you try to explain to people that it's not really about a style, but it's about trying to be avant-garde and innovative, and use sort of these theoretical aspects that you're aware of, and trying to be thoughtful of time and place, zeitgeist, genius loci, and considering aside and just designing the best that you can, and seeking it lovingly and passionately, and just designing what you think is potentially the best that you can consider for this particular site, and the site is very important. Furthermore, if I could distill it just down to really what the fundamentals are in the most basic manner possible, you can distill it down into trying to create just functional, healthy, and happy circumstances for the ecology and the humanity. And if you're considering that continuously, then you're doing all right. Okay, number 9. What were your references / inspiration? So, when I consider a precedent study, that takes me back to about 2009, 2010. Living in New York City, I was lucky enough to get an internship prior to entering architecture school with a firm called Big Prototype, with John Nafziger and Sarah Strauss. A small firm, Yale grads, just really great experience, and that even further propelled me into architecture. But through my experience living in Manhattan, being able to visit the High Line was, at that time, it was pretty new. I think it had only been developed up to phase 1, and that experience at the High Line is definitely essentially a precedent study for this project. I'm saying, like, what to do with a public garden refuge or a public park. I ideally saw this project is something that's autocatalytic, in which you build one portion, and then further down the street you build another and another and another and another, obviously under other programmatic sensibilities, but sort of this linear sort of park that people can love and enjoy. Question 10. Which aspects of a design do you focus more during designing? To be honest, I mostly focus on the conceptual aspects, as far as what is this project conducting for the broader context. Also the form. Form, function, form, function, form, and function, form, and function. I know it's been drilled into your ears, but at the same time, you still see so much sculpture in architecture. Grasshopper and Rhino is awesome, and being able to build these immensely interesting and captivating visually designs is cool, but simultaneously, I like to look at form and function from more of a sustainability level, actually harnessing the forces on the site, like I've said, harnessing what is going on. I don't have the resources, but a lot of people have the resources to collect a lot of data on a site and utilize. I think that should be utilized. And I watch a lot of Formula One racing, and I study how the cars are designed, and it's all about aerodynamics, and it's not only just being teardrop slipstream, but there's downforce required, vortices to get around the tires, the Venturi effect to get under the car, and I think there is a lot of room to explore how to harness. Although a building is a static, structure or object, but how to harness everything that's going on around it. Heat, thermal, solar, wind, water. If you can harness what's already occurring, I think that is where you design your form, and I think that is primarily the objective of the design. And so when I think someone is designing, I think that is the initial real foundation for how you design, and then you can throw on other cool features after or integrate them. But I think, I think it's a real ancient and perennial idea to just think of the form and also the material that you're building out of. Yeah. Question 11. What, according to you, is the key to making your design a success? Well, fundamentally, I believe it derives from 1, doing your research, 2, sticking to your principles, 3, try and be thought-provoking and also try to be versatile in understanding empathy for other human beings and trying to understand what other people's experiences are, even if they are far different than yours. And then 4, if we're discussing primarily the competition, sticking to the judging criteria. I think that is, if you focus on the criteria and you design towards that, I think you are far more likely to be successful. Okay, final question. Question 12. Which tools do you use during design? What is inside your toolbox, such as software, applications, hardware, books, sources of inspiration, etc.? I feel like relative to probably most people in architecture, my circumstance for technology is probably pretty sad. I'm still, I had to blow the dust off of my Asus laptop from 2010. I bought it in 2010 to go into undergrad, and that is my computer that has all of the design software. Primarily that software consists of Rhino. I use mostly with Grasshopper, but I don't need Grasshopper for this project. That's for 3D modeling, and then obviously I have the CS5 suite, which I don't even know what Photoshop and Illustrator come in now is called anything remotely near that. So I use Illustrator obviously for line work, and then Photoshop for photoshopping with renderings. And I use 3D Max from 2010 as well to then produce my renderings, which it all functions, it all still works. Looking at different other projects like within the top 50. I feel like I'm like, oh my goodness, my graphic communication is definitely probably maybe a little bit behind. But yeah, that's what I still have to work with, and that is the literal old, ancient, outdated probably software that I'm working with. And then other than that, books, I still I receive the Architectural Record. That's definitely a periodical magazine that I receive every month that I signed up for. And when I was in undergrad and never gave up, I probably have over 140 issues of it by now. That's stacked in my library. But I look through those every single month. I even bookmark projects I really like or something. And then other than that, just utilizing Instagram to look at architecture. And then a big source of inspiration is just some traveling I've done. And I think that's the best way to really learn about urbanism or really architecture, is to just go places and experience it. Take pictures that are notable, not pictures of everything. And yeah, just experience the world as much as you can. I mean, if I've ever had an opportunity where I could travel somewhere, I'm hop right on that, because I mean that is the best way to differentiate, like what is experientially cool and what is like experientially kind of weird. Um, and then fundamentally, what else? And then yeah, just figuring out who your favorite architects really are, the architects that inspire you. I mean, I have so many. I don't want to waste time naming them all, but uh, find who you identify with and find what kind of designs you're into, and then really dive into their ideals, their experience, their where they came from, what their foundations are, what drives them, how they, how they approach design. I think diving into that with, other architects that you really identify with, I feel like that's one of the most important aspects of understanding architecture. Anyways, I think that wraps it up.